Hey guys, welcome to Masters of Marketing. This is Ross. Today we're bringing you another experienced marketer. We have the pleasure of speaking with a content marketer, a PR consultant, and a trainer from G-Force Communication. She'll be teaching us about content marketing strategies and is happy to answer questions about any size business, big or small. Let's give a warm welcome to Ann Gynn. Ann, great to have you today. You're
Hey,
welcome.
thanks for inviting me. This will be a fun conversation to come through. So I appreciate the invitation, and I appreciate anybody who's listening now or later. And I want to make this as helpful as possible for everybody. So practical stuff, ask questions, and we'll just kind of breeze through the next 30 minutes or so in the idea of helping you with content marketing, which I like the conversation. Obviously, I do content marketing, so I like the topic. But the idea that content marketing can be useful now, perhaps more than ever, for really all types of businesses. Whether your business is booming, and that's great, and for those in certain sectors of the healthcare industry and emergency services and frontline, or if your business is flatlining, or you're closed even now and you can't do business, but you're planning to reopen for that. So there's something for everybody in this process with content marketing. So we will get going, and I'm going to do my technology stuff. We'll see.
While you do that, I'm just going to say I'm very much looking forward to our witty banter, and if anyone has questions, feel free to put them in Facebook Live, feel free to put them in Zoom, and we'll get on them right away.
Yeah. So, are you guys seeing my screen or not?
For sure.
Okay, great. One of those things that we're all learning the techniques of Zoom from that. I also chuckle of how many times I used to do normal calls, just calls, and now everything's the Zoom world. So anyways, to come through. So what we're going to be looking at is content marketing strategies for the rest of us. Because I don't know if you remember a few years ago, there was April the giraffe that became the internet sensation, and people were just spending hours upon hours waiting for that giraffe to give birth, and it was over a month. And it's kind of quaint today to think of like, oh, we've got the time now, we could watch April the giraffe for a month. But people made the time then, and millions of people viewed it, and they ended up getting branding from Toys R Us. Not necessarily the best, maybe that's what happened with Toys R Us, but the idea is we can't all have a giraffe to giving birth for ours. So we actually have to work and think of how we're going to do this with our audiences from that. So needless to say, I'm going to start, as Ross mentioned, I have my own business. So I'm a solo communications practitioner, but I'm also work with the Content Marketing Institute. They're one of my clients. So I use content marketing for business development, but I also then daily I edit their blog and I do writing for them. So I'm lucky enough that my job is content marketing to learn more about content marketing. So I come at this from both a business owner and from somebody who's working in content marketing and helping educate people in content marketing every day to come through, and you'll see a blend of that information. So what is content marketing? And for all those of you who are parents at home and have your kids homeschooling, don't worry, this is not a spelling test or a dictionary definition memorization test to come through. But I think it's helpful to kind of ground ourselves in what content marketing is, because it's going to inform everything else we're going to talk about today. And often I see people who say what they say content marketing isn't content marketing. It's not advertising from that. And that's really the strength of content marketing to come through it. So the first part of it, and I bolded some words here to come through, but it's strategic. There is a reason for doing it. And that's so often really the missing point where people start off doing. Often it's social media. I'll get clients who say, we need to be posting on social media. What should we be doing? Can you help us post? And I'll ask, but why? I don't say the but part, but like explain to me what your reasoning is, why, what you're hoping to accomplish. And often they'll say, we want a lot of fans or followers. Okay, great. How does that connect to your business? Why do you want all those people? We all like people, well, most of us like people to like us, but there's got to be more than that. You're a business, you're an organization, you're running something, you need a purpose. And so that strategic approach is essential to coming through. Obviously, it's creating and distributing content, but the three key factors, and really what's evolves and changes a little bit in the world that we're in now, is creating that valuable, it should be valuable, relevant, and consistent. And let me start with relevant first. So if we think about our own world, what was relevant March 1st is probably not as relevant today from that. And hopefully what will be relevant 2 months from now is not relevant to us today. So it's what's relevant to your audience. And that is what's changing more now than has in the past to do that. So a lot of this stuff, I admire people who we advocate, get your content plans done, plan all your content for the next quarter, the next 6 months from that. And that's not the case today. If you're doing that, you're going to be challenged because your relevancy to your audience is changing. The relevancy means you're going to get somebody to look at your content. They've now said, okay, it's worth clicking, it's worth opening the newsletter, it's worth clicking on play. But then when they get there, it better be valuable to them. It better be helpful, entertaining, whatever it is that you're trying to communicate. They shouldn't click away after a couple seconds or think that this is a waste of my time. They at least need to have a germ of something that feels it was worth their time, because otherwise they won't come back, or they won't view you as a credible source. They won't believe you the next time that you're promoting content. And then the third one is consistent. Often people confuse consistent with frequently, and they think they need to be publishing content all the time on every channel and doing that. And that's really the biggest way to head for failure if you are trying to do everything on all at once to come through, because I recommend focusing on one channel at a time as best as possible. I also have had bosses and clients, and I know that you can't always just focus on one channel, but you can focus on consistency. And I'm sure we've all been there, where you read a blog and everybody's excited when the blog launches or the podcast launches, and they're like, okay, we're going to do this every day or 3 times a week. And then 6 months later, nobody's podcasting anymore. There's no, the blog article that you were searching for, you found on Google, it was ranking well. And then you get there and find out it's from 5 years ago. And you're like, okay. So it needs to be consistent based on the resources you have available. So when you're setting up your plans, aim lower. If you can do more, that's great. Your audience isn't going to go, oh my gosh, 2 weeks in a row. So plan with your resources what you have. If you can do a podcast once a month, great, that's fine. Don't think you need to be weekly. Move up to weekly when you have those resources in it. The important point is to make sure it's regular from that, and that you don't fail your audience in it. So you set yourself up for success from the beginning.
Can I butt in quickly? So
Sure.
when you say consistent, is that based on what your audience wants to see, or is that more based on your resources? Like for us, we've been live streaming every day for the last 5 weeks. Do you think we're crazy? Like, is that too much? Is that too much content for the viewers to actually be able to consume, or is it just a resource question of whether or not we'll burn out?
Well, it goes to both points, really, from that. You're ambitious. I won't call you crazy. You're ambitious to do it. It's a lot of work to invest that time. But the great thing is you now are going to have your audience data to know what's the audience telling us from that. Is it growing from, are your numbers growing from where you started? Because you launched it. So you have a baseline of we've launched. So there was 0 the day before, and then there were more the next day to come through. And so it's ambitious. It's not wrong, because you have the capacity to do it, and you guys have a schedule. So that's great. You've got it lined up to do that. You didn't start it 1 week and then go, oh wait, what's going to happen next week? From that, you had a plan of attack from that. But is it, we're in unique circumstances. So I know some people who started some daily messaging for people at this time, but they're not planning. They are not planning to do it for the rest of their lives. And again, we're asking for some kind of commitment, not the rest of your lives for anything. I recommend you first have to look at your resources almost before you look at how often your audience wants it. Because if your audience wants it every day, but you can't deliver it every day, it doesn't matter in that respect to come through. So I think that you guys have done a good job of trying to figure out how to be ambitious, but still make it manageable in your timing. So
Thanks. That's a good insight.
good stuff. So finishing up, you talked about your audience and you guys knowing who you're trying to target and who your audience is from that. That's helpful to revisit right now just to make sure, is our audience still who we need it to be? Or do we now have dual audiences? You know, if you're a manufacturing plant or a service that's now making protection equipment and you change your, you know, what you were manufacturing from like cars and parts and things like that, you may have a new audience. You may not care about the safety audience. You may keep with, you still need to keep your old audience because you're going to go back to making cars or whatever it was before. So think about who your audience is. And this last part is the content marketing part. It's got to drive an action. And ultimately is bolded here because it takes time. It is not going to be overnight from that. Even if you have great content, it's not going to be a quick fix. You know, before the pandemic happened, the research was showing about 12 to 18 months to really see results from your content marketing. It is not a short-term project. And when people expect results after a week or a month to see, particularly of driving consumer actions if it's purchasing, it's going to be very difficult to do that. But so now's the time because you want to build relationships. Content marketing is about building a relationship with your audience so that you're connected to them in good times and in challenging times from that. And so it may be easier to sell now in one way from that to come through.
So you talked about like relevancy and consistency and timeliness. You know, one tactic I hear a lot about is kind of evergreen content. Is that something that kind of aligns with this strategy, or is that kind of like a different strategy completely?
No, evergreen, it's a great question because evergreen content certainly fits into that. What's relevant and valuable depends on the person, right? Depends on your audience. So for example, you know, at the Content Marketing Institute, if I wrote an article about SEO today, SEO trends, somebody in 2 months, that going to be, and actually SEO probably isn't the best evergreen topic, but let's say how to write well. Let's just do that. How to write well or faster. I did a recent one on how to write faster from that. So that content works for that day. It works for the purposes, it goes out in a newsletter. It works as continual content. And a different part of that audience is going to find it through SEO. And that could be 6 months from now. In fact, I just got a LinkedIn invitation from somebody who's like, I really like your article on this topic. And it was a few years ago, I think, that I wrote it because I was just looking at it for something else. And they're like, I really like that. Can we connect? Well, sure, because it was useful to that person at that time. So it's helpful when you're creating your content. What's evergreen? What's the stuff that can last? And what's the stuff that has a short lifespan? And kind of finding the right mix to do that, because everything shouldn't be evergreen, but probably everything also shouldn't be, quote, timely or trendy from that to come through. So
excellent response. Thank you.
This works good. Keep going, Ben. So this next slide of why content marketing now, I'm going to go through a few examples from this. These are reasons why content marketing before. So that part hasn't exactly changed. Its importance may have changed and evolved and increased, and I'm going to walk through that. So the first one is lead generation. Most people want more business. That's why they're in business. That's why they're trying to get clients and customers from that. It is not a quick, as I said, transactional approach of where somebody's going to read a piece of content or listen to your podcast and immediately buy your product from that. It is building and understanding that you're a reliable company, that you're helpful to them in multiple ways to come through. And so I'm 2 examples from my business. The first one, which I've got right here, is the comments on a blog post I wrote. So I'm producing content that positions me of talking about topics that my industry audience would be interested in. And then this one was published. It was not on my site. It was on actually the Content Marketing Institute site, but it was published on a third-party site. The person posed a question, and I blocked out their name so you can't see that part of it, but out of respect for them. But taking a step back, how do you find ghostwriters? That was the topic, was how to ghostwrite well. And so then I responded to the person and gave them some ideas, and then they responded back. We later connected through LinkedIn, And that's what I do. But I didn't go into the comments saying, hey, you hire me. How do I find ghostwriters? Just hire me. That's not what I did. I created a relationship of providing information that might be helpful. And then later, when we did connect through LinkedIn, their budget is on hold until May, but it looks like we're going to work together. This person's from Dubai. I'm in Ohio. There's no way that this person would have been looking up and found me just doing a basic SEO search from that, but they read my content and responded. And
That's awesome. There's this influencer I follow. To that point, he basically always says, give in public, ask in private.
Yes.
I think it's such like a good mantra for these types of anecdotes.
I haven't heard that specific one, but it makes sense. I think it's great to do that. And I'm terrible at sales. If you ask me to go, I'm like, but this is a way I can sell from that kind of stuff. So it's not, or I should say sales are not my strong suit from that. I had another client reach out through LinkedIn because he read some article I wrote. And I actually asked him a couple times, which article was it, so that I could understand it. He's like, the one about, well, I write a lot. So I passed that to go, but he's like, you understood what I tried to say I'm looking at agencies, and your article indicates to me you understand what I was trying to say. He didn't know whether I was an expert in what he needed, but he reached out because he read my content and it resonated with him. It was relevant and valuable to him, and we've done a couple projects since then. So you can use content in a number of ways to get business to come through. But in these days, you can also use content as the reason to stay connected to your customers, your audience, however you phrase it, your prospects to come through there who may not have a business need right now. And that's where I say it's a bridge to stay connected with your audience. And this, the Travel Zoo down here, if you can't read, the headline says 20 amazing places you can visit without leaving home. Well, Travel Zoo's in the business who sell travel from that. So it used to be 20 places you want to visit, and there'd be package deals with it all from that. But Travel Zoo knows its audience is not interested in traveling right now. So what other content can it provide or supplement its existing content with to appeal to its audience currently? And that provides that bridge, because otherwise people aren't going to be visiting Travel Zoo's site. They're not going to open its e-newsletters from that because it's not on their mind. They're not interested. But now suddenly when they've given them a reason to open it now, they will. And so that's the bridge, so that when travel does resume, because it will, people will still be thinking about Travel Zoo when it happens. The last one to talk about is the reason to reach out to your audience. And this is more direct. So there's a lot of user-generated content, and UGC content is often in it. The example, and it's a little hard to see, but Buffalo Wild Wings did a 30-second video based on people shooting Instagram of them doing sports. Like there's a kid who's playing hockey while roller skating on a treadmill, and there's just all creative stuff that people doing from that. Those people now have a connection to Buffalo Wild Wings because their content got used. Now, if you're not a sports bar and you don't have something as sexy as hockey on a treadmill, you can still do it by shooting an email to a client or a prospect saying, hey, we want your opinion on this. Could you shoot a 1-minute video on whatever your industry topic is? Or crowdsource a blog post to do that. Invite them into helping create the content. The other thing you can do is ask them what their needs are. So the Content Marketing Institute has about 200,000 subscribers. You do not need to talk to all 200,000 from it, but you could do a survey saying, hey, what are your top challenges right now? What's the thing that's keeping you from boredom? Or how are you keeping your sanity from that? And kind of relate to questions to your business, but also relate to them. Even if they don't respond, you're still going to have a touch point. And this is very popular with sales teams and your salespeople. They need a reason to call that's not about selling now from that. So it can be valuable in that respect to come through.
So when you say you should reach out to people and have them shoot a 1-minute video, what are you selling them? What's their motivation other than just pure publicity that would get them to put in the effort to do that for someone like you?
It's a good question, because in one way we all like to be asked, right? You get that invitation and you're like, oh, that's cool. They thought enough of me to ask me from this. So I must have some value to them. And so it is a little bit that it's part ego, it's part marketing for them, right? It's content marketing for them because they're out there now positioning themselves with their opinion. Then they could share that to their social channels or write about you on their blog or talk about the podcast or whatever. There's a number of ways that they can then use the finished product to come through. So it is, again, it's a little bit ego, but it's also helping them market. And it's also like, wow, they value my opinion from that. So even just more of that connection to the company to come into it.
Gotcha. And if you are a new startup or a new company that's starting one of these strategies for the first time and you don't already have a large audience, is there a way that you position yourself as like, we're going to grow our audience, this is the effort we're going to put in? Or if they question who's going to actually see that piece of content, how do you respond?
It's interesting because I do a number of different things of soliciting sources. There's a help a reporter out as a service. So you can put your pitch out there and get people to respond. You need to vet. I will go through that. But what I find are people don't often ask as much. I mean, if you're talking to big influencers and big names and people who get big money for speaking engagements, yes, they're going to ask. Although I have heard of people influencers now people who have been speaking before, and that was their business, are not getting, they can't speak as much now. Their conferences are all canceled. So there's actually capacity now to reach out to people. So I think if it's a startup, it's talking about playing about what your business is, who your audience is. From that, positioning anybody as an expert or insightful is usually enough from it. And if they don't want to do a video, because some people are not video, just ask to do email questions and then use a picture or something and do a slideshow or just write it in a blog post to come through. But
Got it.
Yeah.
So Ann, we're as a company are in like an interesting situation. I wanted to get your feedback on something. We're doing this daily Masters of Marketing, and we'll definitely keep it on monthly, weekly, like ongoing throughout quarantine. We're doing every single day because it connects with people. It's helpful. We think it's adding value to the community. Like this conversation is extremely valuable. My concern is about your resources point before and kind of like what we should expect or what we could expect like an outcome to be in terms of content marketing. I find that it's a little bit, when I'm running like a paid ads campaign, like I can understand my customer acquisition cost really, really clearly. And in this scenario, I'm not really sure my key metrics of whether, oh yes, we should continue this on a daily basis or we should move it down to a weekly basis. Is there any like framework or thinking around that you feel we could use to kind of evaluate our own content marketing efforts?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a couple ways. And content marketing, the ROI question, and this happens at big enterprise companies, it's like, what is doing it? And so it's setting, the first thing is, what do you want somebody who's watching these live streams to do, think, or know? So what do you want them to do, think, or know? And how are you going to measure that? So if you're selling services, chances are somebody watching directly connecting to a service, that's a bigger leap than it is to get them to subscribe to an email list from that. And then it's tracking, right? Do so for example, if you host an event, I work with a client in the event business, they know how many touch points it takes that they're more likely to convert to pay to go to an event from that because they're tracking that person's behavior from that. So what's that first step that you see? And when you're a startup, it's figuring out and what works and what doesn't and giving it time to do that. And like in your case, that subscriber base is one of the huge things. Email subscriber bases I always recommend it as the first conversion point because then you own the audience. Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, those companies own your audiences. That's Joe Polizzi, who founded the CMI. It's rented land. You don't control the algorithms. You don't know who those people are. You can get lookalike audiences, but you don't know who they are. So if it went away the next day, you don't own them. You're not going to be able to contact them. So that's why I always say the first step is looking at how many people are subscribing based on your existing audiences. The other thing I look at in live streams is what's your on-demand audience looking for. So after people have seen it, are they promoting it and sharing it? Are people finding the topics relevant? Are they coming? And where's that traffic coming from the post event, particularly with live streams that are just launching?
That's
a great response.
Our subscriber list is growing like amazingly fast, and we don't have an actual ask for a lot of our subscribers right now. We're just kind of trying to be helpful and useful. So this is like exactly what I needed to hear. Thank you.
And that's exactly, to be helpful and useful. You hit on it, right? It's you don't have a specific ask. That is your ask, is to the email address, right? That's the call to action. Too many people get into content marketing and think the call to action is to buy the product. And after every blog post, it's buy the product. And you're like, okay, I'm either going to buy the product or I'm not when I'm ready to from it. But don't keep hitting me, because then it feels like a sales, right? And it's the same with the content. If you're always writing about your products and services, that's not going to help me from that. But helpful and useful, I'm going to have a relationship with you. Always selling. If I'm going to buy and be gone. I'm not going to stick around to come through. Yeah, it's very smart.
Thank you. That's awesome.
This I'm just going to quickly go through, but it's really the Venn diagram of your audience and your business. You got to find the sweet spot in the middle. You can't do it just for your business. We were just talking about that. You can't promote or sell for your business. You can't just address your audience needs from that. So if you're a tech software company, now is not the time necessarily to be putting out recipes because more people are cooking at home, right? Your audience may be interested in recipes, but they're not interested in you to provide that kind of thing. So you need to find the sweet spot of what your audience needs that marries with what your business does or is needing to share from that. This is really the quick action plan that I suggest, and I have some links on the next slide, which is the final slide, to share. But you need to create, anybody needs to do this, and again, this is one of those last things people get around to, but to document your content marketing strategy. And I would say do it in one page. Right now, it should be interim because, again, the world's changing so fast. I went through a 7-step process that you can repeat, and you can do it in an hour or two. The research, when the Content Marketing Institute does its annual research, no matter whether it's B2B or B2C, the results are those who document a strategy. Sometimes they say they have one, it's not documented. I say you don't have one if it's not documented, because what if you win the lottery and you're not around anymore? You need it documented to work from that. But those who document a strategy are much more successful than those who don't in all aspects of content marketing. So get it down, get it in writing, and at this point, you can just do it, again, in a short amount of time. You don't have to you've already done some research for your business, so you have some general ideas from that. The other key component with that strategy is to make sure to set measurable, realistic goals with a short time frame. This is kind of that current state you need to think about because things are changing. And the other thing with goals, we often talk about increases, right? We want to increase the number of subscribers. We want to increase the percent of open rate for the email newsletter. But in this time, maybe status quo would be fantastic, or just stopping losses. So maybe it's not going below, not seeing a decrease of over 10%. And it's a different way of thinking from that, because you're always wanting to increase, but if people aren't opening your emails now for valid reasons, it's not because of your content now. Maybe you need to look at, okay, it's okay to see our email open rate shouldn't drop below 10% of where it was March 1st or something like that. So think about that. And then the last two, operate in the now and adapt quickly to the temporary normal. And we've talked about a lot of that, but we haven't talked about start thinking about the new normal. I realize there's so many factors that aren't known at this time of 6 months or a year from now, but some of the factors we do know. We do know what industries are going to look like. We have an opinion. So start thinking about what will your content marketing look like in 6 months, a year from that. It may be slightly different. The timeline may be shifted, but you know that there will be a new normal. It's not going to go back. Our economy and environment is not going to go back the way it was in February 2020. It's not going to happen in the short-term future from that the next few years. So how can you start thinking about that now? Don't wait for it to happen to then react to come through.
So Ann, all right, I prepare an article or video or piece of content, and I'm ready for the new normal, and I'm about to launch it, and or just in general, when you're launching a new piece or a new piece of content, what's your distribution strategy?
So when launching, if it's my business and you have a subscriber base, I always like to share it with the subscribers first. So if, let's say it's a blog post, let's just go with a blog. It's simple for practices, but it could be anything. When you publish it to your blog, well, especially if you're just starting out, probably, and even if you're not, people don't regularly go to a blog every day, especially industry type of blog from that. So sending that out as a newsletter or even a daily, figure out what's the right frequency for your audience, and let your audience, your subscribed audience, know first. It's also an incentive for people to subscribe because they get it first from that. And then hit your social channels from promoting it of what's most relevant for that. So your Facebook audience may be slightly different than what your LinkedIn audience is. So,
Very different.
Do that. Right? It is. It's amazing of how from that, but you probably know which one is more valuable to the business, right?
Yeah.
That's where go what's most valuable to the business to do that. So it's helping because you're right. You have to promote it. And the whole conversation, right, in paid promotion and organic reach and that kind of stuff. But you do have to think about how you're going to promote it, because just publishing it on your blog is not going to get you the traffic that you want.
In terms of like SEO versus paid promotion, what do you find? Like, have you kind of done paid campaigns with content before?
I have with some clients from that, and I'll say I'm not involved with the Content Marketing Institute on the promotion side of it from it. So it's not specifically based on that, but it's picking what content you think is going to resonate with people who don't know your brand, but people you want to target when you're starting to pay for that. So lookalike audiences like Facebook has to do it, but not promoting everything. Pick your star piece or your star topic and focus on that. It doesn't mean you shouldn't publish anything else, because once they come, but pick and really focus on one piece. And this kind of goes back to where you're talking about evergreen. Either it's really, really timely or it's really, really valuable. That's worth the promotion, and to try it different ways, right? The paid strategy, particularly, of not just doing one ad and assuming that that's going to work, but monitoring the metrics and seeing what's getting the response that you want. Not just the like, but is it going to somebody looking at it? Are they not just clicking but the article, but are they staying on the site longer from that? And that's the kind of audience behavior, which is why I love marketing now. I mean, marketing 20 years ago, you weren't getting numbers like that. It was like, does somebody respond to your direct mail and mention your ad? But now we've got the metrics to know everybody's behavior of what they did once they clicked. And that's scary for some, but it's helpful for marketers.
Nice. I have a question from the audience. So Kativa asks, your Venn diagram says that you should kind of stay in the lane and give your audience what they expect from your company. But the question is, does this disruption and what's happening with COVID, isn't that an excuse to try something completely new and different? And if so, do you have any insight on, how they can take advantage of that to try something their company may have never tried before?
Yeah. So yes, it is the perfect time to try something different. It still needs to have some connection to your business from that, I believe. I have seen, Steakums came out, and somebody followed the Steakums Twitter. I didn't until I saw them talking about the importance of staying home and all this kind of stuff, and really kind of went more on that subject line about safety. And it wasn't at all about selling Steakums. And I don't think they did it to sell Steakums from that. So corporate social responsibility. So sometimes it works, but I think it's got to connect to the business. And I'll point to the DoubleTree cookie recipe. They have now come out and shared that recipe for that famous cookie that they've built the business around in a number of ways. That's something that they would have never done before under normal circumstances, do that. And now it's like this prize that now we know that there's lemon juice in their cookies and we can make them at our home because we can't go to the hotel anymore. But we probably won't make them as good, so we'll go back to the hotel for them. We'll still pick them as our hotel when we travel. So I think it's time to get out of the box, but the box should still be connected to both things from that.
It's a good response. So find what your audience might want that they've never heard you say before, and use a new changing environment as a reason to share some secrets. But those secrets can only be fully taken advantage of if they come back to your company.
Right. It's that way to stay in touch, right? It's that bridge until you can get their business back to come through. So, yeah.
Got it. Ann, this has been an awesome presentation. Thank you so much for teaching us all about content marketing. It was fast-paced, enjoyable to listen to, and there's just a lot of content packed into these slides. And you have all these resources here. I'm sure that you wrote a couple of these yourself.
Well, yeah, I picked the first one because that's what we've been doing, is changing our content. And when you're writing for them, you can change the content fairly quickly to do that. So, yep.
Nice. I have a couple closing questions just before we leave. The first one is, if people want to learn more about you, actually, it looks like all of your information's right here. That's usually my question. You were completely prepared. Cool. So if people want to learn more about you and learn from you, they can connect with you on LinkedIn, Twitter. Awesome. Second question is, when you're learning new strategies, and like you probably write a ton of content, but you need a lot of ideas to write that new content, where do you go, or what are some of your favorite articles, videos, blogs to keep up to date on the latest? And what's
you know what? It's funny because I will often just do Google searches on random things from that. I'll pick the topic and try to find those things, not necessarily the most popular topic, but dig into where Google is not the first page of results, and it's amazing what you can find. So when I'm looking for content, B2B content examples from that, great examples, I then, in the industry along with the Content Marketing Institute, there's HubSpot's got a great blog, Moz, there's so many I'm not going to start listing because then I will get in trouble. But that's the kind of go-to resources. But here's the thing, don't just look in your industry, look outside your industry from that. What financial magazines are writing about? What are they talking about that might be interesting that you could do in a different way? What's a people or, that kind of thing, entertainment coverage. What are they doing that you could do in a way that might be interesting to your audience? So I don't have anything specific. It's more when I have the need, then I start Googling like everybody else.
Gotcha. It sounds like more than just trying to find facts and figures, you're finding inspiration from wherever you can find it, all of the
Right. And then it's also, you can learn what was that topic, and you see what everybody else has written about. Well, then what can we do differently? And that's the key, is like, you now have a list of everything that everybody else has done. So what are you going to do differently? And that's kind of helpful too, to know what I shouldn't be thinking about.
So I agree and I disagree. So I faked an Amazon Alexa vending machine. I just made a video that was like, this exists, it's super cool. And I heard from someone at Google who said, we were going to make one of those, but we're not going to make it anymore because it already exists. And I'm like, that was just an After Effects video I made in like 5 hours. So yes and no, but you can miss out on some great opportunities. And
you can have the audience, right? Google's got the audience that I'm guessing you don't have Google's audience.
It got 20,000 views, but they have
that's awesome.
400 million, voice devices out there.
But that's pretty intimidating for Google to make a decision, because if you have an audience, Google might have been able to do it a little bit better or a little differently, and they have the audience, right, that may not have seen yours. So yeah, you're right. It's a good point. That's awesome.
For sure. I like that point, which is like, a lot of people are like, I don't want to build a company like this because a company like this already exists. And you're like, great, the world is not very, very small. Like, your company can do exactly what this other company does. And as long as you're providing value to another set of people with the same content, the same information, if you can build your tribe, you'll still be successful.
Yeah, definitely.
Cool. So just to wrap it up, my very last question is, who would you like to learn from that you'd like to see on the Masters of Marketing?
Ooh, that's a good question. Actually, Rand Fishkin from Moz, who is the SEO. I've seen him present before, and he's fun. but really insightful and helpful. And he does so much original thinking and research and things like that, that he's a character. And so he'd be interesting in multiple ways from that.
Sounds fun. We'll see what we can do. Awesome. Thank you so much, Ann.
Thank you, Ann.
Thank you,
Thanks,
everyone,
guys.
for coming to Masters of Marketing. And we'll see you tomorrow at the same time. Have a great day.
Thanks.
Thanks.